Alright everyone, what's up? It's Fenner, and lately I've had a lot of people coming to me, how do I beat Mech? What do I do against Mech in the late game? It's too strong, I can't do any damage to it now. This is something I was struggling with myself for quite a while, and I tried thousands of things. I tried smashing ultras into the army. I tried going Roach Hydra Viper to trade to try and make things a bit quicker, to try and whittle them down. But I came up with this style, which I think is very, very strong. And maybe it's not unique, maybe it's not my style, it's definitely been around before, but I feel like I've got a really good grasp of it, and I can show you guys it and at least give you some way of beating that late game Mech instead of just bashing your head against the wall time and time again, just going into PDDs, swarm hosts into PDDs, never doing any damage. My style is pretty simple once you know what it is and how to execute it. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. Alright, so we're going to be ignoring the early game and the mid game here. We're going to be solely focusing on the late game turtle mech composition, the ravens, the tanks, and the Viking kind of composition, up into Battle Cruisters as well if they decide to transition to that. So where do we start? We've decided we're into the late game now. The mid game's gone by, we've defended a push, he hasn't moved out or something like that, and we're setting up in the middle of the map. And we're getting to the point where normally it's like, well, I can't really kill him right now, but I can't really do any damage. So we're at this point. Where do we go? What do we do? What do we need to set up? First of all, what we need to do is get that creep spread going. We need a lot of creep spread against this kind of composition. It needs to be going straight through the middle of the map, all the way up to his base. We don't want him to be able to move out onto the map without him stepping onto the creep. Second of all, we need spines on bases for any harassment that he might want to do. So Hellbat harass and Hellion harass is very common in late game Mech. They just use up their spare minerals on Hellions and Hellbats, and they just throw them into your mineral line. So at least 3 or 4 spines per base surrounding them so that you don't die to that. That's the worst feeling. Because you're not going to have too much mobility with units. You're not going to have Zerglings, you're not going to have Roaches, you're not going to have any of that, so it's all up to the spines to defend. Throwing a Spore in there is nice as well if he's going heavy Banshee, and if you see actually if he's building a lot of Banshees, then you might want to start throwing a bunch more Spores down. Other than that, you need some upgrades as well. If you haven't already got your upgrades going, you probably want to go for double evolution chamber, get those range upgrades going. And another big thing you want to do is poop on every single base on the map. It's one of the strongest things you can do against late game Mech Terran, because honestly, it slows them down so much. You don't want to be in that scenario where they just sneak up a base on the other side of the map, because every base for a Mech Terran is extremely valuable. Now, we've got all the basics set up. Now we're going to talk about the composition and how we're going to play this. So the composition is swarm hosts, not a surprise. We're only going to be going up to about 16 to 20. And then we're going to be getting a lot of queens. We're going to go at least 10 queens. And we're going to get a lot of vipers as well. 10 to 12 vipers, maybe even more. And then the rest of the composition is in spores and spines. The spores and spines are the real damage of this composition. You set up the swarm hosts to be able to contain them so they can't move out so easily, and then you just spam spores and spores and spores and spores and more spores, and you want a bunch of spines in there as well. The spines help out because you'll find that locusts die real easily to the tank fire, so you need the spines in there to be able to abduct the tanks into the spines. So we're getting all of this set up. How do we play it? Well, we want to go for abducts only. Generally, most of the time, it's very rare that a blinding cloud will be better than an abduct. It just costs so much, and with PDDs and so many tanks, it's very rare that your locusts will actually be doing damage. Like I said, they're just for containing the opponent. So every abduct, you want to be going for abducts all the time, as much as you possibly can. That's why we've got so many vipers. So the goal is to expand across the map as fast as possible, creep everywhere, spores and spines at locations that he might be wanting to expand to, and spores and spines on bases that you want to take. You want to expand so quickly. You can play on a pretty low gas count. Since your main composition is spores and spines, everything can just go into minerals. In this game in particular, it goes to 45 minutes, but I only mine from 8 gas. You might need a bit more later on if it goes for longer, but everything I was doing was just going into minerals so I can secure the entire map with the static defense. So we want to be going for abducts all the time, pull Vipers, pull Vikings into spores, pull tanks into spines, pull Ravens into spores, pull Battle Cruisers into spores, whatever you can. Use Queens as well at the front of your spore spine line, because they're going to help out with the DPS against the Vikings and the Ravens once they get pulled in. They even help out with DPS against the tanks, and they don't go down too fast. You don't need a lot of swarm hosts in the middle of the map. You know, if he's trying to take a 4th or 5th base, you can easily move 5 or 6 swarm hosts around to the side, even though you've only got 16. Once your static defense is set up, you don't actually need that many swarm hosts. Like I said, the real damage is coming from the spores and spines. And I just want to emphasize how many spores you actually need. You need a hell of a lot of spores, because most of the damage will be tanked by PDDs, and the more spores you have, the faster you will get through PDDs. This is why a lot of players fail against the Terran Mech, is because they just try and use locusts to get through the PDDs. But even if you max out on pure swarm hosts, there's not enough DPS to get through the PDDs, which is why you need so many spores to be able to just fire into the PDDs and take them down. And it just works out so well. Generally though, you're going to want to set up spores and spines before you move to a new position, so you can use Overlord poop to do that if you haven't got the creep spread. That helps out a lot. Otherwise, if you do just move swarm hosts around to another base to harass the base, then you're going to end up losing them to a Hunter-Seeker missile or something like that, or just anything that can come at them. Because with no static D, they're pretty much useless. So that's it really. Like, it's very simple. The hard part is getting everything set up, because it actually does cost quite a lot of APM, and you don't want him to move out or anything like that. You need to get a lot of spores and spines, and you've got to get them in the right locations as well. You want to be continually picking at things whilst building spores and spines. You're going to have to do a lot of abducting, a lot of transfusing, a lot of sucking energy out of buildings. That's why we've got the hatcheries in the middle here. The hatcheries help out so much. That's why you've got the 10 queens. The 10 queens are there so you can just keep draining energy over and over and over, and you just retransfuse the hatchery. It's so efficient. And yes, you will be trading Vipers for Vikings kind of inefficiently, but even though it's inefficient, you should be able to keep them locked down onto a small enough base count that you can take pretty much the rest of the map. And even though it's slightly inefficient for your Vipers going against Vikings, you will end up winning the game. Trust me. I think this is definitely the strongest style to use against Mech. I've tried a lot of other things. Ultras can work. Mass Infester, we've seen that from a lot of Koreans. There's a lot of people doing a lot of different styles right now, but this is my favorite style. I definitely think it's one of the stronger styles. I think one of the reasons why people think this kind of style is weak is because they see other people doing a similar style where it's just heavy swarm host, but the real idea with this is just to pick off things with the Vipers and the static defense. The swarm hosts don't actually do that much at all. They're not very useful. They're just for locking down the map at the start of the game. If you've been struggling with Terran Mech, the Turtle Mech style, I hope this helps you out. And that's about it for me. Very simple style. It just takes a lot to set it up and get it going, and it might take a bit of practice as well. That's it for me today, guys. I'll see you in tomorrow's video. Peace, guys. Terran player. Then you've got the optional drone scouts if you want to be safe. I like to go with the 13 drone scout and just look around at proxy locations, but you can also go with the 10 drone scout straight to their main base to find out if they've got nothing there, in which case they're probably proxying you as well.